This is unacceptable. How could you let this happen? You need to be more careful.
The Earl found out I'm actually a maid. He's furious. Scrub, scrub, scrub. Then, a heavy door slams open. Have you ever lived two lives at the same time? In one life, I was a mysterious woman in a silk mask, debating science with the most brilliant Earl in London. I was his equal. I was his mystery scholar. But in my real life, I was the invisible girl on my hands and knees, scrubbing the mud off his boots. I knew it was dangerous to wear that mask. I knew that if the Earl of Blackwood ever found out that the woman he was falling in love with was actually his new maid, he wouldn't just be angry. He would be destroyed. Well, yesterday, the mask fell off. He found out. And let me tell you, furious is an understatement. Before I tell you how I lost everything, please do me a quick favor, hit that like button if you love a good scandal. Make sure you are subscribed so you don't miss the rest of this story. And I am so curious to know, where are you listening from today? Are you in the US, the UK, or somewhere else? Let me know in the comments below. Now, let's go back to the night I made the biggest mistake of my life. The night of the masquerade. Chapter 1. The Midnight Masquerade. I wasn't supposed to be there. If the housekeeper, Mrs. Higgins, had known I was in the Earl's private library instead of in the attic darning linens, I would have been thrown out on the street that very night. But I couldn't help myself. Lord Julian Blackwood, my employer, was a man of science. They called him the bored Earl because he hated parties. He preferred botany, stars, and logic. And his library, oh, it was a paradise. I had borrowed a domino mask and an old dress from the costume trunk in the attic. I told myself I just wanted to see the ball from the gallery. But my feet had carried me here. To the books. I was standing by the desk, reading his open journal. He was writing about the Amorphophilus titanum, a rare flower. But he had made a mistake in his sketch. The stamen was wrong. You're frowning, a deep voice said. I spun around. There he was. Julian. The Earl of Blackwood. He wasn't wearing a mask. He looked tired, holding a glass of brandy, leaning against the doorframe. He was devastatingly handsome, dark hair, sharp eyes that missed nothing. I should have run. I should have curtsied and fled. But the mask gave me courage I didn't possess. I am not frowning, my lord, I said, disguising my voice to be lower, smoother. I am merely disappointed. He raised an eyebrow, stepping into the room. Disappointed? In my brandy? Or my hospitality? In your botany, I said, pointing to the journal. You've drawn the pistil too short. It won't pollinate like that. Julian froze. He looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time. He didn't see a maid. He saw a challenge. He set his glass down and walked toward me. And what would a lady in a domino mask know about pollination? More than an earl who spends too much time at parties, I countered. He laughed. It was a rich, genuine sound that I had never heard while serving him tea. For the next hour, the world disappeared. We didn't talk about the weather or the gossip of the ton. We argued about science. We talked about the stars. We stood so close that I could smell the sandalwood soap on his skin, the same soap I laid out for him every morning. He looked at me with such intensity, such hunger. Not a physical hunger, but an intellectual one. He looked at me like I was the only person in the world who understood him. Who are you? He whispered, reaching out to touch my hand. I must know you. Take off the mask. My heart hammered against my ribs. I wanted to. Heaven help me, I wanted to tell him my name. But I knew the truth. If I took off the mask, the magic would die. He wouldn't see his equal. He would see Elinor, the girl who emptied his fireplace ashes. The spell broke. I have to go, I gasped, pulling my hand away. Wait, he shouted, stepping forward. Please, just tell me your name. I cannot. I turned and ran. I didn't glide like a princess, I sprinted like a thief. Stop, he called after me. I reached the servant's door, the hidden panel behind the tapestry. I wrenched it open and slipped into the darkness of the narrow hallway. But in my haste, something fell from my hair. It wasn't a glass slipper. I didn't own glass slippers. It was a cheap, rusted hairpin. The kind you buy 5 for a penny at the market. I heard Julian's footsteps stop. I heard him pick it up. I fled up the servant's stairs, tearing off the silk dress, my hands shaking so hard I could barely undo the buttons. I shoved the dress into the bottom of the trunk and pulled on my rough, grey wool uniform. I washed the face powder off in the basin, scrubbing until my skin was raw. By the time the sun came up, the mystery scholar was gone. The next morning, I was in the breakfast room, on my knees, polishing the sideboard. The doors opened. Julian walked in. He looked terrible. He hadn't slept. He was pacing the floor, gripping something tightly in his hand. "Mrs. Higgins," he barked. The housekeeper ran in. "Yes, my lord. I am looking for a woman," he said, his voice obsessed. "She was here last night. Intelligent. Sharp-tongued. She left this." He held up the cheap, rusted hairpin. It looked so out of place in his manicured hand. "I will find her," Julian vowed, staring at the pin. "I don't care if I have to knock on every door in London. I will find the woman who owns this pin." I kept my head down, scrubbing the floor, my heart beating so loud I thought he must hear it. He was looking for a princess. He was looking for a scholar. He had no idea she was right at his feet. I thought I was safe because I was invisible to him. But I forgot that Julian is a detective at heart. And soon, he started noticing that his maid knew things she shouldn't know. Join me in Chapter 2, where the cat-and-mouse game begins, and I almost get caught. Have you ever wanted to scream the truth, but knew that one word would destroy you? For 3 days, I lived in a special kind of hell. I watched the Earl of Blackwood turn his house upside down looking for his mystery scholar. He was obsessed with her. He was falling in love with her. And every morning, I had to stand right in front of him, pouring his tea, while he looked right through me like I was a piece of furniture. I was the invisible woman. But then, I made a mistake. A slip of the tongue. I let the mask slip, just for a second. And now, the Earl isn't looking through me anymore. He's watching me. Welcome back to Chapter 2. If you enjoy the tension of a secret identity, hit that like button right now. And don't forget to subscribe, things are about to get messy. Now, let me tell you how I almost got caught. The library was quiet, except for Julian's frustration. He was sitting at his massive oak desk, surrounded by piles of ancient texts. His hair was messy, his cravat loose. He hadn't slept properly since the ball. I was on the ladder, dusting the top shelves. I tried to make myself as small as possible. "Useless," Julian muttered, slamming a book shut. "Absolute rubbish." He ran a hand down his face. If only she were here. She would know. My heart squeezed. He was thinking about me, or rather, the version of me he met in the dark. I watched him pick up a translation he was working on. It was a botanical text in Latin. He scratched out a word, wrote another, then groaned. "The root structure, bifurcated? No, that doesn't make sense in this context." I bit my lip. I knew the text. My father, the scholar whose name I could no longer speak, had taught me that passage when I was 12. "Don't say anything, Elinor," I told myself. "You are a maid. Maids don't know Latin. Maids don't know botany. Just dust the books." But seeing him struggle, seeing his brilliant mind stuck on something so simple, it was torture. He sighed, defeated. "It must be a translation error." The words slipped out before I could stop them. "It's not bifurcated, my lord. It's reticulated." The silence that followed was deafening. I froze on the ladder, my blood turning to ice. I had spoken aloud. I had corrected an earl. In Latin. Julian turned in his chair. Slowly. He looked up at me on the ladder. His eyes were narrow, calculating. He didn't look angry. He looked confused and suspicious. "What did you say?" he asked softly. I gripped the duster so hard my knuckles turned white. "I had to fix this. I beg your pardon, my lord," I stammered, putting on my thickest, simplest accent. "I was just talking to the spider. Nasty little thing. Retic something. I don't know words, my lord, I'm just a maid." It was a terrible lie. Julian stood up. He walked to the foot of the ladder. He looked up at me, his gaze piercing. "Come down here, Elinor." I climbed down, my legs shaking. I stood before him, keeping my head bowed, staring at his boots. "Look at me." I raised my eyes. He was studying my face. He was looking at my eyes, the same eyes that had stared at him through the mask 3 nights ago. I prayed he wouldn't recognize the color. "You have remarkable vocabulary for a woman who claims to be talking to spiders," he murmured. He took a step closer. The air between us crackled with electricity. It wasn't the distance of master and servant. It was the tension of a man and a woman. "Who was your last employer, Elinor?" he asked quietly. "Where did you learn to speak so clearly?" I couldn't tell him the truth. I couldn't tell him I was the daughter of a disgraced scholar, accused of a theft I didn't commit. If he knew who I really was, he would hand me over to the police. "I worked for a vicar, my lord," I lied. He liked to read aloud. Julian stared at me for a long moment. He didn't believe me. I could see it. But he didn't fire me. Instead, a strange light entered his eyes. A curiosity. "Very well," he said, turning back to his desk. "You may go, Elinor. But, leave the door open." From that day on, everything changed. He didn't fire me. He started testing me. He would leave complex books open on the table where I was dusting, just to see if I looked at them. He would discuss his theories aloud while I was lighting the fire, waiting to see if I would react. And the worst part, I wanted to react. I found myself lingering in the library longer than I should. I found him watching me when he thought I wasn't looking. We were playing a dangerous game. He was falling in love with the mystery scholar, but he was becoming obsessed with the maid. And I knew it was only a matter of time before he put the two together. I thought I could keep the game going. I thought I was smarter than him. But in chapter 3, I get careless. Julian tricks me. And when he sees the ink stain on my finger, the game is over. You do not want to miss the moment the Earl explodes. They say the truth will set you free. But in my case, the truth left me homeless on the streets of London. I knew the game was dangerous. I knew that every time I fixed a diagram or whispered a word of Latin, I was getting closer to the edge. But I couldn't stop. I was falling in love with him. And I thought, foolishly, that maybe he was falling in love with me, not just the mystery scholar. I was wrong. Last night, the Earl of Blackwood didn't just find out who I was. He found out I had been lying to him every single day. He didn't look at me with love. He looked at me with pure, cold fury. Get your tissues ready. Chapter 3 is the heartbreak. If you've ever been misunderstood, hit that like button. And make sure you are subscribed, because I'm going to need your support for what happens next. Chapter 3, The Discovery. The house was chaotic. Julian was hosting the Royal Scientific Society for dinner. It was the most important night of his career. He was presenting his research on the Amorphophilus flower. I was supposed to be invisible. Just a pair of hands refilling wine glasses. But I could see Julian was stressed. His notes were a mess on the sideboard. He was distracted, entertaining Lord Calloway and the other scholars, leaving his presentation papers unguarded. I walked past the sideboard with a tray of empty glasses. I glanced at his diagram. My heart stopped. He had drawn the root system upside down. If he showed that to the society, they would laugh him out of the room. It would ruin his reputation. I looked around. The guests were in the dining room. The hall was empty. I put the tray down. I picked up his quill. I dipped it into the inkwell. Quickly, Elinor. Just a quick correction. I crossed out the error and sketched the correct curve of the root. I blew on the ink to dry it. What are you doing? I dropped the quill. It clattered onto the silver tray. Julian was standing in the doorway. He wasn't looking at his guests. He was looking at me. He walked over slowly. He looked at the diagram. He saw the correction, the perfect, scientific sketch drawn by a maid's hand. Then, he looked at my hand. I tried to hide it behind my back, but he was too fast. He reached out and grabbed my wrist. His grip was like iron. He pulled my hand up to the light. There it was. A fresh smudge of black ink on my index finger. He looked at the ink. Then he looked at the diagram. Then he looked into my eyes. The realization hit him like a physical blow. I saw the color drain from his face. It was you, he whispered. The voice wasn't angry yet. It was shattered. My lord, The Latin, he said, his voice rising. The journal. The mask. It was you. He pulled me hard, dragged me away from the dining room and into his private study. He slammed the door so hard the windows rattled. You played me, he snarled, releasing my wrist as if my skin burned him. You stood there, pouring my tea, watching me tear this city apart looking for you, and you were laughing at me. No. I cried. No, Julian, my lord. I wasn't laughing. I was terrified. I couldn't tell you. Why? He shouted. Because you wanted to see how far the fool would fall? Did you enjoy it? Did you enjoy making the Earl of Blackwood fall in love with a servant? He said the word servant like it was a curse. I am not just a servant. I yelled back, finding my courage. I am Elinor Vance. My father was. I don't care who your father was, he roared. You are a liar. You came into my house under false pretenses. You manipulated me. You made me trust you. He turned away, gripping the edge of his desk. His knuckles were white. I thought I had found my equal, he said, his voice dropping to a cold, deadly whisper. But I only found a fraud. Tears streamed down my face. I did it to protect myself. If you knew the truth. The truth. He laughed bitterly. You don't know the meaning of the word. He pointed to the door. Get out. I froze. My lord. Get out of my house, he commanded. You are dismissed. Take your things and leave. If I see you on this property in 1 hour, I will call the constable. But, it's night, I whispered. I have nowhere to go. He looked at me. The warmth I had seen in his eyes for the last week was gone. The Stone Earl was back. Then you should have thought of that before you decided to make a fool of me. I packed my bag in 10 minutes. I walked out the servants' entrance into the pouring rain. I didn't have a reference. I didn't have a home. I had nothing. I walked down the driveway, looking back at the massive house one last time. I saw the light in the library window. He was in there. Probably erasing my corrections. Probably trying to erase me from his memory. I turned my collar up against the cold and walked into the dark. I had lost him. I thought my life was over. I thought I would disappear into the slums of London and never be seen again. But I didn't know that my enemy, the man who framed me, was watching. And I didn't know that Julian was about to discover a secret that would bring him to his knees. Join me for Chapter 4, The Twist. The truth comes out, but is it too late? I tried to leave England forever, but the Earl chased me down. I was standing on the gangplank, looking back at London one last time. In my hand, I held a one-way ticket to New York. In my pocket, I had 3 shillings to my name. I was running away. Not because I was guilty, but because the man I loved believed I was a criminal. I had accepted my fate. I was going to disappear. But then, I heard a voice screaming my name over the roar of the crowd. I looked up. And I saw something impossible. The Earl of Blackwood, a man who never ran, never raised his voice, and never lost his composure, was sprinting down the dock, shoving sailors out of his way. He wasn't coming to arrest me. He was coming to claim me. This is the end of my confession. And it ends with the most romantic moment of my life. Get your handkerchiefs ready. Here is the finale. Chapter 5, The Redemption. Boarding for New York, the ticket master shouted. I took a deep breath of the salty, fishy air. This was it. Goodbye, Julian. Goodbye, botany. Goodbye, England. I handed my ticket to the man. Elinor. The scream tore through the air. It was raw, desperate, and terrifyingly familiar. I froze. I turned around. Julian was running toward the ship. He looked undone. His cravat was gone. His shirt was unbuttoned at the neck. His boots were covered in mud. He looked wild. Stop the ship, he roared at the captain. Stop her. The crowd parted. He reached the gangplank and ran up it, grabbing the railing for support, gasping for air. I stepped back, clutching my bag to my chest. My lord, what are you doing here? Did you bring the constable? He looked at me, his chest heaving. The constable? To arrest me, I whispered, tears stinging my eyes. For the theft. For lying. He stared at me, and then his face crumbled. The arrogance, the anger, the coldness, it all vanished. Elinor, he breathed. He took a step forward, ignoring the ticket master who was trying to protest. I didn't come to arrest you. I came to beg your forgiveness. The world stopped spinning. What? I know, he said, reaching out a hand but not daring to touch me. I know about Lord Calloway. I know about the necklace. And I know who your father was. My mouth fell open. You know? I was a fool, Julian said, his voice shaking with emotion. I looked at the ink on your fingers and I saw a stain. I should have seen the mark of a scholar. I should have known that the woman who argued with me about flower anatomy could never be a common thief. He took another step. Calloway confessed. Or rather, I forced him to. Julian's eyes darkened for a second, then softened as he looked back at me. He stole your father's work, Elinor. And he tried to steal your future. I will not let him take you from me, too. But, I stammered. But I am a maid, Julian. I scrub your floors. You are not a maid, he said firmly. You are the most brilliant woman I have ever met. You are the only person in this world who sees the world the way I do. He dropped to one knee. Right there. On the dirty, wooden gangplank, in front of 100 sailors and travelers. The Earl of Blackwood knelt in the mud. I spent years looking for a peeress, he said, looking up at me with shining eyes. I wanted someone to match my title. But I was wrong. He reached out and took my hand. His grip was warm and solid. I didn't need a countess. I needed a partner. I needed someone to match my soul. He kissed my knuckles, the same fingers that were stained with ink yesterday. Don't go to America, Elinor. Come home. Come back to the library. Marry me. Write books with me. Argue with me. A tear slipped down my cheek. You want to marry me? After everything? I would marry you if you were a chimney sweep, he smiled. As long as you promised to never hide that brilliant mind from me again. I dropped my bag. It hit the wood with a thud. Okay, I whispered. He stood up and pulled me into his arms. The crowd on the dock erupted into cheers. The ship's horn blasted again, but I didn't care. I wasn't sailing away. I was going home. That was 3 years ago. Lord Calloway was ruined, by the way. Julian published my father's research under the correct name Archibald Vance and exposed Calloway as a fraud in the London Times. He never showed his face in society again. As for me, I am currently sitting in the library of Blackwood Manor. But I'm not dusting the books anymore. I am writing one. Julian is sitting across from me, sketching a new specimen. He just looked up and winked at me. We are writing a book on botany together. The cover says, by the Earl and Countess of Blackwood. I found my happy ending. And it wasn't at a ball, or in a palace. It was in the library, with the only man who loved me for my mind. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If you loved this happy ending, please hit that like button, it really helps the channel. And if you want more Victorian romances, secrets, and scandals, make sure you are subscribed. I have a new story for tomorrow. What was the title about again? Yes, it's about the disappearance of the Duke's first 3 wives, and trust me, you won't want to miss it. Until then, keep reading.